My nephew told the court I couldn't manage my own life. He wanted to be my legal guardian over my home, my money, and my decisions. What he didn't know was that long before that hearing, I'd already decided he wouldn't be the one defining who I was. My name is Helen. I'm 69 and I live in a small blue house at the end of a quiet street, the same one my husband and I bought in the late 70s. The evening this truly started, I came home from the grocery store with a paper bag biting into my fingers and that familiar dull ache in my back. I was thinking about chicken soup, simple, comforting. The kitchen still smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. The sky outside was soft orange. It should have felt safe. Instead, my phone buzzed before I could set the bag down. A text from my nephew, Ryan. Made it home okay? You really shouldn't be driving alone anymore. Next time I'll take you. Easier for everyone. The words landed like small slaps. You really shouldn't. I could hear his tone in my head, gentle, firm, like a teacher correcting a child. I'd driven myself all over this town for decades. I'd driven his mother to appointments after her hip surgery. I'd driven Ryan to school when my sister worked early shifts. Now my driving was a problem, and that line, easier for everyone, sounded polite. But what I heard was, your work now. You're a risk. I typed back that I was fine, that I'd only gone to the store down the road. My fingers hovered, wanting to add that I'd never had an accident, that my last eye exam was good. I deleted the extra words. Defending myself felt like begging for a passing grade. When Ryan first started helping, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like family. He'd stop by on Saturdays to carry in bulk groceries and say, "Let me handle the heavy stuff, Aunt Helen. You just rest." At first I was grateful. It was nice not to wrestle with a case of bottled water alone. Then he started taking my wallet at the checkout. "I got it," he'd say, swiping my card without asking. "You always get mixed up with the chip and the tap. Modern stuff is confusing." Mixed up. Confusing. I knew how to use my own card. Once or twice, I'd paused, trying to remember which way to insert it, and I'd felt the cashier's eyes flick toward me, neutral pity dressed up as politeness. My cheeks burned, my heart raced, not from confusion, but from humiliation. It was such a small thing, plastic and a PIN number, yet it felt like another piece of my life being gently lifted out of my hands. Then came the bank. Ryan suggested we go in to check on things. "Just to make sure everything's safe," he said. "There are scams everywhere. People your age are targets. People your age, targets." He said it calmly like it was obvious. At the desk, he leaned toward the young banker and added, "My aunt gets a little overwhelmed with numbers sometimes. I'm just helping her sort it out." Overwhelmed with numbers. I'd balanced my checkbook for 40 years. I ran the budget in my house after my husband died, when nobody was coming to save me. Still, the banker smiled at Ryan, not at me, and started directing her questions to him. I forced myself to answer clearly, voice steady, while something in me shrank in that chair. Each time Ryan cut in with, "She means," or "what she's trying to say," another thread of dignity snapped inside my chest. At the doctor's office, it got worse. He insisted on coming in just in case you forget something important. When the doctor asked how I was feeling, I opened my mouth. Then Ryan spoke first. "She's been a little forgetful," he said. "Misplaces pills, repeats questions. Nothing major, but we worry." We, like there'd been meetings about me, misplaces pills. I'd mixed them up once, one morning, distracted by an insurance call. I'd told Ryan myself, trusting him, laughing at my own mistake. Now it sounded like evidence. The doctor looked at me with that careful, calm expression, like he was searching for a problem. Heat rose under my skin, anger mixed with shame, and worst of all, a flicker of doubt. Had the ground already shifted and I was the last one to notice? On the drive home, Ryan kept one hand on the wheel and the other on a folder of my medical papers he'd gathered to be organized. "I just want to keep you safe," he said. "If anything happens, someone has to step in. You don't always remember things the way you used to. It's nothing to be embarrassed about." I stared out the window at my own neighborhood passing by, suddenly looking distant, like it belonged to someone else. His words were wrapped in kindness, but they still stung. It felt like he was rewriting my life in real time, turning ordinary moments into proof of weakness. That night, after he left, I noticed small changes around my living room. A list in his handwriting on my coffee table, things Aunt Helen forgets. Beside it, my utility bill, unpaid, set out like an exhibit, something he'd asked to take care of for me. My hands trembled as I picked up the paper. The list was short, almost casual, but every item was a private moment I'd trusted him with. Each line was a tiny cut. I stood there in the quiet, only the refrigerator hum, a neighbor's television murmuring through the wall, and my home felt less like a refuge and more like a file he was building. I didn't confront him that night. I washed the dishes, folded the dish towel, turned off the lights. On the outside, I was the same aunt he'd always known. On the inside, something shifted, a thin crack splitting my trust, spreading wider with every careful, smiling word. The envelope showed up on a Tuesday. Thick, official, my name typed in sharp black letters that didn't feel like me at all. I stood at the kitchen counter with sunlight on the mail pile, thinking it was another insurance notice. Then I saw the words summons and guardianship, and my fingers went cold. My first thought was, there has to be a mistake. My second was Ryan's voice, calm and reasonable. If anything ever happened, someone has to be able to step in. I read the first page twice, the lines blurring at the edges. If the court found me incompetent, my nephew could be appointed to control my home, my bank accounts, and my medical decisions. The paper said it in dry, careful language, but what I heard was, "You will no longer belong to yourself." One sentence landed harder than the rest. May lacked the capacity to manage personal and financial affairs. I could almost hear Ryan repeating it to someone, slow and confident, like a phrase he'd practiced until it sounded true. Every word felt like it had been pulled from my private life and turned into a label they could pin on me. My chest tightened, but I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I pulled out a chair and sat down carefully, as if my body might break as easily as my trust had. Inside, though, something detonated in silence. All the small injuries of the past year rushed in at once. The way he took my card from my hand at the checkout, the way he corrected me in front of the doctor, the list on my coffee table. Things Aunt Helen forgets. Each memory stung, sharp and humiliating. Not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd let him make me feel wrong for being human. I thought about the years before all of this, when Ryan was little and would come running down the same sidewalk to my front door. My sister worked double shifts then, and I was the one who watched him after school. I made him grilled cheese, cut into triangles because he swore they tasted better that way. I helped him with spelling homework at this very table. His feet would swing under the chair, and he'd ask 100 questions, and I'd answer every one, proud of how bright he was. Remembering that boy, and then looking at a summons that described me as in need of protection, felt like my heart being turned inside out. Family comes first. I lived by that. When my sister's roof leaked, I used my savings to help pay for repairs. I canceled a weekend trip with friends so the contractor could get into the house. No one asked me to. I just did it because that's who I was. When Ryan left for college, I slipped him a check for books. He hugged me and said, "You always look out for me, Aunt Helen." Those words used to warm me. Now, with that paper in my hands, they burned. In his mind, it seemed that years of me looking out for him had become proof that I couldn't look out for myself. Trust doesn't snap in one day. It wears thin, thread by thread. A comment here, a gesture there. When Ryan started handling my online banking, he said, "You took care of us for so long. Let me take care of the numbers now. You don't need to worry anymore." On the surface, it sounded loving. Underneath, it felt like he was easing me out of my own life. Every time he changed a password for security, a little more of my independence slipped away. Back then, I couldn't name what I felt. Gratitude mixed with something sour and uneasy. Now, staring at that summons, I could name it. He hadn't just been helping. He'd been building a case. Later that week, my neighbor Mrs. Lopez caught me by the mailbox. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were careful in a way that made my stomach knot. "I saw Ryan," she said. "He mentioned there might be changes for you soon. He said, once everything is in my name, I can really make sure she's taken care of." Everything in my name. He'd said it like a promise, maybe even like a joke, but Mrs. Lopez looked unsettled. Hearing it secondhand hurt more than if he'd said it to my face. It meant he was already speaking about my house and my life as if they were items on a list he'd soon own. My cheeks heated with shame and anger. I forced a polite smile and told her I was fine. Inside, I felt like someone had opened my front door and announced I wouldn't be living here much longer, while I was still standing in the doorway. Back inside, I looked around my living room. The curtains I sewed myself, the dent in the coffee table from when Ryan was 7 and dropped his toy truck too hard. The framed photos, birthdays, graduations, moments I planned for, paid for, smiled through. Pieces of a life I built with care. The summons treated them like assets, like inventory, like something that could be managed by someone else. I set the papers on the table and pressed my palm over them, as if I could push their power back through the page. On the outside, I stayed quiet. I made tea, washed the mug, but inside, something shifted deeper than hurt. The pain didn't disappear. It settled into a cold, clear place in my chest, and with it came one sudden certainty. I wasn't going to let him rewrite the story of my life without a fight, even if that fight started in silence. Sleep didn't come after the summons. I lay staring at the ceiling while the blind shadows stretched across my room, and Ryan's careful voice replayed in my head. You don't always remember things. Someone has to be able to step in. Those words sounded different now, not caring but calculated. By morning, I didn't bother with breakfast. I pulled the papers from the kitchen drawer and read them again. The language was still cold, but my confusion had hardened into something sharper. Fear and anger pressing against my ribs like a fist. By noon, I called Gloria, my neighbor and longtime friend. She'd worked as a paralegal for years before retiring. The moment she heard my voice, she was at my door within half an hour, gardening gloves tucked into her back pocket. I spread the summons and petition across my table. She read in silence, lips tightening into a thin line. This isn't just a form, she said finally. He's asking the court to take your rights. This is guardianship, Helen. That's serious. I forced myself to ask what it meant. Gloria explained the difference in plain terms. A power of attorney is something you choose and can change. Guardianship is different. A judge can declare you unable to run your own life, and then the guardian can decide where you live, how your money is used, and what medical care you receive. It felt like the air left my lungs. This wasn't paperwork. It was a request to erase me as an adult. He didn't even talk to me first, I said. My voice shook, and I hated that it did. He went straight to court. That says a lot, Gloria replied, tapping the petition with one finger. Let's see what he told them. We read it line by line. My aunt frequently does not know what day it is. I remembered one Sunday when I'd mixed up the date on a flyer and we'd laughed and corrected it. In his version, it sounded like I wandered through life lost. She has given away large sums of money to strangers. I almost laughed from disbelief. I donated to a veterans charity and tipped the young man who shoveled my snow all winter. That was kindness, not confusion. The way he twisted it made my stomach turn. Then I hit. She is often unable to keep herself or her home in a clean and safe condition. My hand froze on the page. I looked around my kitchen, counters wiped, floor swept, sink empty. A single pair of reading glasses on the table? I took pride in this house. I'd kept it running with my own hands even when my back hurt. Seeing those words in official print, like I lived in filth, felt like an insult to every early morning I'd spent mopping before family came over. Shame and anger surged up at once, even though I knew it wasn't true. Gloria looked up. Has he ever had power of attorney for you? For a moment I couldn't answer. Then I remembered my surgery years ago, when I signed a simple hospital form so he could speak to the doctors while I was under anesthesia. We treated it like a small favor. He'd smiled and said, I'll always protect you, Aunt Helen. Now that memory stung. I'd trusted him with something important, because I believed he loved me. He was using that trust as leverage. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Quietly I said, This reminds me of my father. He told me I couldn't handle my own life. He took my paycheck when I was young and saved it for me. Later I found out he spent most of it. The words tasted bitter. Back then, I promised myself I'd never let anyone do that to me again. Gloria covered my hand with hers. You're not powerless, she said. You can get your own lawyer. You can ask for an independent evaluation. Your own doctor, not whoever he picks. The court needs your side, not just his stories. Something in my mind cleared. Guardianship meant losing rights, but the process wasn't finished. There was still time. And the resentment I felt toward Ryan shifted from hurt into fuel. That afternoon, Gloria helped me call the clerk's office and request the full file. While we waited, my phone buzzed. Ryan, I put him on speaker so I wouldn't have to hold it. "Hey, Aunt Helen," he said, smooth and bright. "I heard you got the papers. I don't want you scared. This is just to keep you safe." Everyone thinks it's for the best. Everyone thinks. I pictured him talking to neighbors, to doctors, building a picture of me as helpless. I asked why he hadn't come to me first, why he hadn't asked what I wanted. "I didn't want to stress you," he said. "You get overwhelmed with details. It's better if I handle it. You know I love you. This isn't about control. It's about love, not about control, about love." The words were gentle, but underneath them I felt the shove. Him steering me toward a corner while calling it protection. I could have yelled. Instead, I kept my voice calm. "I understand," I said. "Let's see what the court says." Gloria's eyebrows lifted. She knew what I was doing. On the surface, I sounded agreeable. Inside, I was drawing a line. Let him believe I was still the trusting aunt who would go along. Let him think I was confused. That belief could be my cover. When the email from the court arrived, it included his written statements and a list of incidents. The morning I burned toast and set off the smoke detector became frequent kitchen mishaps. The time I called twice in one day because I'd forgotten what time he was visiting became repetitive calls without understanding prior conversations. Each ordinary human moment had been stretched into proof of decline. Reading it hurt, like someone pressing on the same bruise again and again, but something useful hardened inside me. I stopped asking whether he might be right. I stopped replaying my small mistakes as evidence against myself. I finally saw his pattern. He'd taken my life, my kindness, my normal stumbles, and rearranged it to fit his goal. I closed the laptop and took a slow breath. "All right," I said to Gloria. "If he wants to tell the court who I am, then I'll show them who I really am. We need a good doctor and a good lawyer." I swallowed, steady now. "And I'm going to remember everything he's said and done, because I'm not letting this go." By the end of that week, my anger had cooled into something steady. Not a rush in my chest anymore, but a quiet line. I would take my life back, and I would do it without giving Ryan the show he expected. Gloria found an independent geriatric psychiatrist, someone with no ties to the court, no connection to Ryan's doctors. I called the office myself. My voice shook at first, but I spoke clearly, spelled my name, gave my birth date, set the appointment. Every question I answered without help felt like proof. Ryan loved to say I got overwhelmed. I used that memory like fuel to sound even steadier. I told Ryan I had a doctor's thing on Thursday. I didn't explain. He said, "Good. Maybe the doctor will finally see what I mean about you needing support." See what I mean? He spoke as if my life were a project only he could understand. I kept my tone light and said I'd let him know how it went while thinking, "You will. Just not the way you expect." The evaluation was thorough. Memory questions, simple math, written instructions. It was tiring, but it wasn't confusing. When I hesitated, it was nerves, not weakness. The doctor spoke to me with respect, looked at me, not past me. That alone tightened my throat. At the end, he said, "From what I see today, you understand your life, your finances, and your needs. I see no sign that you cannot make your own decisions." Hearing it felt like a window opening. I had always known it in my bones, but his formal report made it solid. Gloria helped me find an elder law attorney. I arrived with a folder, copies of Ryan's texts, notes about what he'd said, my bank balances showing nothing missing except what I approved. The lawyer listened and said, "You're doing exactly what you should. We'll show the court you're capable, and that your nephew is using the system against you." Hearing "against you" out loud loosened something tight in me. It wasn't me being dramatic, it was real. We filed a response to the petition with the psychiatrist's evaluation, my budget, and letters from neighbors and friends who saw me regularly. Each document felt like a brick in a wall between me and Ryan's version of me. At the same time, I cleaned up my legal life. I updated my will. I didn't need revenge, but I removed Ryan as executor. Replacing his name with someone I trusted felt like taking back a key he'd quietly pocketed. I signed new medical and financial directives, naming people who listened instead of speaking over me. We revoked any hospital forms that gave Ryan automatic access. The lawyer filed formal notices so there would be a record. For the first time in months, I felt safer. At the bank, the manager said gently, "Your nephew told us you wanted him to handle everything because you get confused." My teeth clenched. The same story, told the same calm way. I kept my voice even. We removed his access, changed passwords, and added alerts so any new attempt would require my in-person consent. As I signed, I felt quiet satisfaction. He thought he'd already won. He had no idea the ground was shifting. Ryan sensed it when his help stopped working. "The bank gave me trouble," he said, irritation under his sweet tone. "Did you change something without talking to me? This makes things harder for everyone." Everyone again, as if my privacy inconvenienced a crowd I'd never met. I didn't explain. "I have it handled," I said. "You don't need to worry." My calmness unsettled him more than arguing ever could. He paused, then tried again. "I'm just trying to keep things comfortable for you." That line might have made me doubt myself once. Now it only confirmed what I knew. He liked me quiet and dependent because it made his life smooth. The summons flashed in my mind, lacks capacity, and the way he talked about my house as if it were already his. The hurt turned back into resolve. As the court date approached, family pressure started buzzing. My sister called, nervous. "Ryan says you're fighting this, he just wants to help. Why are you making it so hard? You're upsetting him." Every sentence centered his feelings, not my rights. "I'm not a problem to manage," I said. "I'm a person. I have a lawyer. We'll handle it in court." Her sigh sounded disappointed. "You're destroying the comfort we finally had," she murmured. That phrase stayed with me. Their comfort had been built on my silence and on taking my rights. It stung, but it made me sure of myself. I didn't argue in group chats where Ryan's version spread. I kept meeting my lawyer, kept my record straight, showed up calm and prepared. Outside, I lived as usual, watering plants, paying bills, making meals. Inside, I had become something different, not bitter, but firm. And as far as Ryan knew, I was still his confused aunt waiting for him to step in. Let him think that a little longer. The truth was already in motion, and soon enough he would meet it where it mattered. At home, the evening light fell across my living room like it always did. The same curtains I sewed years ago hung in the windows. The same dent in the coffee table from Ryan's toy truck was still there. The house looked unchanged, steady, ordinary. The history hadn't moved an inch. What had changed was my place inside it. My phone buzzed on the counter with another message from a relative demanding an explanation. I didn't rush to grab it. I didn't feel the old panic that used to rise in me. What if they misunderstand? What if I lose them? What if I have to prove I'm good? I let it buzz. Then I turned the phone over and left it there, face down like a closed door. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space I was allowed to own. In the weeks that followed, I went back to my lawyer one last time and signed the final versions of my documents. Ryan's name was gone from my legal life. My new advance directive named someone who actually listened to me. Walking out into the parking lot with those copies in my hands, I felt a steady warmth in my chest. Not celebration, not triumph. Just a quiet, solid kind of relief. The kind you feel when you lock your own front door and know the key is finally back in your pocket. Ryan texted again. Then my sister called again. They tried every old angle. Hurt feelings, family duty, fear. He was only trying to help. "You embarrassed him. You're tearing everyone apart." One message even said, "You'll die alone if you keep pushing family away." That line was meant to scare me, and for a moment it did. But then I remembered something even sharper. I had never felt more alone than I did when my own family was planning my life without me. That loneliness was far worse than the quiet of my house, so I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself into exhaustion. I answered once calmly. "The court heard the facts. I'm fine. My decisions are mine." Then I stopped, because I finally understood that people who benefit from your silence will always call your voice drama. They will call your boundary cruel. They will call your freedom selfish. And if I kept chasing their approval, I would end up back in the same trap, just wearing a nicer version of it. One evening, I made myself a simple dinner, washed the dishes, and sat down by the window with a cup of tea. The neighborhood outside was quiet, cars passing, a porch light flicking on across the street, the faint sound of a TV through someone else's walls. Ordinary life, safe life, my life. I was alone in that moment, yes, but I wasn't empty. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't in need of protection. I was just a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for being awake. I didn't hate Ryan. I didn't wish him harm. I wished he had chosen love without control. I wished he had cared about me more than he cared about access. But wishing doesn't protect you. Paperwork does, records do, witnesses do, and the quiet strength of saying no does too. Sitting there in my own home with my choices intact, I understood something I wish I had known sooner. You do not have to earn the right to be treated with respect. You don't have to perform weakness to keep someone close. You don't have to chase people who only feel safe when you are small. Sometimes the strongest kind of love is the one that stops begging and finally says, no more. And if someone walks away because you finally chose your own voice, that goodbye can still be a kind of love. Just not the love you give them. The love you finally give yourself.